Okay, so Carrie Lake again for the trial. We're not going to look at anything as far as witnesses. They speak for themselves. But we are going to look at the closing arguments because remember, we're really looking at the court dynamics. And I watched it prior to making this video. I found it very interesting. Now, during this trial for the second day, he seemed to be very good, at least in my opinion, of just following that fine line of the law. That's what you want.
Present for the record are the parties and their representatives and their respective counsel. Ready to proceed with closing arguments. Plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. Mr. Olson, we'll hear from you first, sir.
Thank you.
So he's hearing from the Lake team first. He goes tight-lipped on it. This stresses him. Probably because he's on TV. Because we have to look at it from that perspective. He knows he's on TV. He knows we're all watching. He knows people like me are watching. Everybody's got an opinion. And it's already a controversial subject. And you don't want it tainted by anything you do. So we're going to try and be very, very kind to this judge. Because if he's taken this much effort to appear neutral, we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Your Honor. Your Honor has heard 2 days.
So he goes tight-lipped. He gives him a respectful eye to him because he's the judge. It's not a jury trial. This is just the judge, and he's going to be the one that's listening to the closing arguments and making his decision based on what he's seen through the trial and what the argument is from all sides at the end. So I expect him, and he does, to be respectful and give the occasional eye contact of I am listening. Now, what he's doing back there writing, I don't know. I am going to assume he's writing notes.
Days of testimony, sworn testimony. Some of it doesn't make sense. Some of it does. The law in Arizona is that an election challenger must put forward evidence sufficient to show that the outcome is wrong or at least uncertain. And that is the seminal case of Finley v. Sorensen. Plaintiffs have met that standard. There's just a little over 17,000 votes out of nearly 1.6 million that separate the candidates. That's less than 0.06%. The 2 issues that Your Honor directed plaintiff to support, that was intentional conduct.
So just to be clear, the judge is listening, and I'm assuming that he is writing notes. So he can't give eye contact the entire time, but he does politely give it in between his note writing. His mouth is relaxed. The tight-lippedness has gone away. He's giving the respectful look, and he's going back to writing.
With the tabulators in terms of the malfunctions, the rejections that occurred on Election Day, and also the chain of custody issue. We've done that, Your Honor.
So there you see a positive head shake, the chain of custody issue. He's like, yes, that is an issue. He can agree with that because that's a hard evidence issue.
We heard some startling testimony. I had to kind of regroup here from what my prepared closing remarks. And that startling testimony from Mr. Jarrett today, it just doesn't make sense. And I'll say why. And this is in terms of whether when we showed through the inspection of ballots, a random selection of ballots from six voting centers, not 3, 6, Mr. Parikh found evidence, ballots that had 19-inch images imprinted on them.
So you're going to see some up and down movement. And it took me a moment to see what he was doing because I was like, is that positive on what he's saying about the vote system? No. He looks like he's picking himself up and moving his hand around in his note taking. So it looks positive because it's up and then down. But more I watch, you see the whole body movement and you see movement into forward and the back on one side of the shoulder. So that goes with writing.
On 20-inch sized paper. He found that in all 6 vote centers that were randomly selected. Mr. Jarrett yesterday testified under oath when he was asked that could it happen or did it happen that a 19-inch image was imprinted on a 20-inch piece of paper, and he testified no. And not only that, his counsel, Mr. Liddy, went with the shrink to fit excuse, and he never said, oh yeah, that's what happened. We've known about this since shortly after the election, and we're doing a root cause analysis. None of this, it doesn't make sense. Another thing that doesn't make sense, they're doing a root cause analysis now, yet he says that, well, this has happened in 3 prior elections. Why are you doing a root cause analysis on this if this same...
So the judge here, you see the eyes kind of furrow in. The brain is engaged in this part of what he's saying.
Same event, this shrink to fit issue arose in 3 prior elections. The other thing that doesn't make sense about this shrink to fit excuse is that it's illegal under Arizona law to modify a ballot after it's been set. You just can't do that. And they're saying that it happened not only in this election, but in 3 prior elections? It just doesn't make sense, Your Honor. The other thing that doesn't make sense is that somehow, and you heard Mr. Macias, he kind of equivocated on this shrink to fit argument about whether you could get it to exactly 19 inches. So all of a sudden, there are supposedly techs that are running around making modifications on election day, which, by the way, has happened in 3 prior elections, and they're all getting it to exactly 19 inches for shrink to fit. Random techs just kind of doing things on their own. This doesn't make sense, Your Honor. And I'm actually troubled to even be talking about this. The idea that when I questioned Mr. Jarrett about this issue, and he said unequivocally it could not happen, and his counsel then trying to clean this up said, well, what about, shrink to fit? That he didn't immediately say, yeah, that was it, when he's supposedly known about it since shortly after the election? It doesn't make sense, Your Honor.
So he's paying attention to him. He's got his mouth covered. I'm going to assume he's actually trying just to hide himself and body language. We don't really see any tightness, and we're going to leave it at that. But let's go on to the one that I think didn't do a very good job.
And with that, Your Honor, I'll sit back.
How do the defendants want to break up their time?
Your Honor, I'm going to try to keep mine at about 15 to 17 minutes and leave the remainder of the time for Mr. Liddy.
You all right with that, Mr. Liddy?
You see the look that came across the judge's face because there's only so much time, and they had agreed prior that they were going to get equal plaintiff time against the defense, and the defense is 2 people. So she's taking a very large chunk.
Fair contest, Your Honor.
Very well.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just 3 days ago, Carrie Lake's lawyer stood in this room and made a promise. Having filled 70 pages of a complaint with grandiose tales of electoral malfeasance, they asked the court to give them a chance to prove their case at trial. Underpinning that argument was the implied promise that they would come to court to trial with something, with anything, to justify Ms. Lake's decision to call on a court of law to give her a victory that the voters of Arizona had denied her. Carrie Lake asked this court to give her the opportunity to make good on that promise, and the court did just that. It gave her the opportunity.
So you're not really seeing him write too much because she's not really going over anything. She's just saying what Carrie Lake did. Now, I've watched this, and it's not good for this woman. She probably had a decent argument at one point, or a better lawyer could have had a decent argument at one point. But you are about to see what you should never, ever do to a judge. Because I'm going to assume with all the learning that they've done through universities and, life lessons, that they're not stupid people. And when you talk to them like they're 5, they tend to not like it.
Opportunity to move beyond mere allegations and speculations and accusations and bring to light the factual bases for her claims and the actual evidence to prove them.
So we start to see the mouth movement because she's saying this woman brought, speaking on the late team, no facts. It's like, oh, okay. He doesn't like the taste of that in his mouth because he's not a moron. This is a typical totalitarian angle to attack what you don't like and dismiss it as unfactual. And he's seen it and we have seen it.
This court not only provided a forum for her to establish her claims, but also set up a clear road.
And now she has gone through and accusing him of giving her a stage. She didn't quite say it like that, but basically she did. Gave her a forum for her accusations. You put her on stage so the world could see you did it. How dare you? That was the best Gollum voice I could find. And you see the judge's reaction, the look that comes across his face with his eyes and his mouth kind of looking agape and giving her, like, what? I gave her a stage? A forum? At this point, when you keep insulting someone, they tend not to listen to you anymore. Now, that doesn't say that he's going to vote for or against or anything of that nature. It's just if you're going to sit there and try and win a case, try not to piss him off.
Roadmap for how to do it in its order from earlier.
Now we've closed our mouth and we're trying to hold a peaceful face because it's kind of crinkled in on them sides. He's going a little bit tight, but he's trying not to let her know that she is pissing him off.
This week, Carrie Lake and her lawyers knew what they had to do at this trial. And 3 days ago, they knew the hand that they had to play. They knew the evidence they had and they knew the evidence they didn't.
You can also tell he's not writing anything down because apparently he is only writing down the actual argument against facts. You can't really write things down in your decision making if all you're going to do is attack somebody with your opinion, because that's not facts. And apparently this judge is not a moron. Again, that doesn't mean good or bad news for either side. It just means he's insulted.
This was their big moment to show their hand. But the only thing that has come to light over the last day and a half, everyone waiting with bated breath to see the big reveal behind these claims, is that they never had the evidence to back them up. I'd like to walk briefly through what Ms. Lake needed to do to prevail on her claims and what she actually proved at this trial.
We just saw movement in the mouth there and a jerk in the body. And I think I heard air as far as a cough. So I think he's trying to hold back something tickling in his throat. So we're not going to hold too much on the tight-lipped. Now we're going to skip through because, again, I have this weird thought that I do sometimes, and it is not to influence or give ammo to any side. So we're skipping forward to the next guy.
Okay, by my count, you got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Warren. Most of this is just theatrics anyway. I'll just cut that out.
Much appreciated.
Yes, I know I skipped it, but he's just been badgered for about 15 minutes, so he's not very happy. Now this guy comes up with, it's just theatrics, I'm just going to cut it out, and he's tight-lipped, much appreciative. So that just explains that look right there. And how does Mr. Liddy do? Is he going to take the same path as the other one?
Your Honor, I want to first touch on a couple things that we just heard from counsel for Carrie Lake. Cancel culture. I don't think that...
Cancel culture. The eyes closed, their exaggerated clothes, the tight-lippedness is there like, really? This is not a subject that he likes. You could speculate on the why.
It means what you think it means. Bias. Their star witness, Parikh, gives freebies for the Prince of Stop the Steal. That's the pillow guy. That's bias. And we trust this court will be able to recognize true bias proceedings.
So there again, as you can see already, we're not presenting facts. We're attacking the outside world. The outside world is being attacked, not what was presented in the courtroom, because Michael Lindell was not in the courtroom. He's financing Carrie Lake's team, but he is not in the courtroom. So you see that look that comes across the judge's face, the tight-lippedness, the eyes. Again, you're not seeing note writing to go against what the Carrie Lake team has done, because you can't put in stuff that's from the outside. You just have to deal with what you put in the trial.
Bias and weigh and rule accordingly. Candidates are allowed to say anything they want out in the town common. and they'll be held responsible by the voters. Not true with lawyers who come in courtrooms in the state of Arizona. There's an obligation. Every lawyer is obligated to interview his or her clients, his or her witnesses, and make sure they know what they're going to say. And if it's not true, can't present it to the court. It's an ethical violation.
So you see the face soften on that. If it's not true, you can't present it to the court because he's going back to, and this is why I say this judge walks that fine line, to what's actually in the courtroom. It's like, oh, okay, now I can get mentally with you as far as this decision and not the crazy attack mode of making me feel like it's all my fault.
And if what exists for their testimony is not enough to meet the burden, the case should not be brought. And so, Your Honor, once you rule, we will be back seeking ARS 12349 sanctions and Rule 11 sanctions. Maricopa County takes responsibility for the errors that occur in every election.
I always thought that was kind of a threat. Once you rule, we'll be back. It's like, ooh. I don't really know what the hell he referenced to and what that means, but it really didn't faze the judge. I didn't see anything, just stillness, which in itself means to me that it doesn't bother him.
In this particular election, November 8th, 2022, there were a significant number of printer errors, a minority by far, but significant. And those did cause real inconvenience and heartache for a lot of people. Maricopa County.
So he talks about the printer malfunctions and he tries to minimalize it. And you get the judge's look. You see him slightly pause, look at him from the top of his eyes. Eyebrows go up like a stare down of yes. And where he sits there and tells him that caused real inconvenience and heartache for a lot of people. And you see the positive movement from the judge. So just by looking at this, the judge agrees the voting machines had an impact. And apparently from the look that he gave when he tried to minimalize it, the judge disagrees with the minimalization of it. The judge agrees that it impacted individuals' ability to vote.
Acknowledges that. Those were election day operations under the Board of Supervisors, not the recorder. But those errors, or those mishaps by machines, if you will, the effect that had on election day voters was compounded, Your Honor, not by intentional misconduct by any employee or anybody under the control of Maricopa County, but by months and months and months of communication from the current leadership of the Republican Party of Arizona and the
This is the last thing we're going to do. Not Maricopa County's fault. It was the Republican Party's fault who said, go in and vote in person. And he knows this part is coming. And it just closes his eyes like, because remember, this guy's trying to walk the fine line of the law. You cannot bring out your opposing evidence that you didn't present in the case. Not that you can't, but just the fact that as far as he's concerned, it's irrelevant. You should have brought it up in the case. So you're insulting this judge. The other one insulted him. This one's insulting him. This path is not a good idea. You shouldn't do that. You can speculate on if this judge is going to judge on evidence or, that he gave Carrie Lake a platform and a forum to spout her conspiracy theories. Because everybody likes to be gaslit. Episode 2 of Skinwalker Ranch has been released. And as we follow along with the reality of it, is it real or is it not? This time, supposedly, they saw something.
Oh, there it is again. There it is again. There it is again.
If you like it, please share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.